So I'll ask my panel to introduce themselves and what space they are in which vertical of the blockchain they are having expertise in, and what actually brought them into the blockchain space as well. We'll start with Noor on my left. So Noor, please.
Hi everyone, so my name is Noor Al-Hanadi. I'm the Deputy Registrar at the DIFC Courts. The DIFC Courts has this incentive to be the first court of the blockchain, and we want to do that in two ways. We want to be the go-to court for blockchain disputes, and naturally there will always be blockchain disputes because now we're entering into this digital transformation era. So we want to first be, or rather be the first court of the blockchain, and we also want to start putting our judgments onto the blockchain to enable efficient and effective enforcement.
Wonderful. So next up we have Marian from Sophia XT. Please, Marian.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So it's a pleasure to be here in Dubai. It's the first time we are attending the conference. Besides of the conferences we are attending over the North America and Europe.
So in that case, ahlan wa sahlan.
Yeah, thank you. It's a little bit cold there, so yeah, it's good to be here in a warm country. So as mentioned, so we at Sophia are former, let's say, technology people, consulting people, so coming from the business side. So the CEO is coming from the McKinsey and Company. The rest of the company is coming from really big four companies, global IT players. So, and we formed actually this team 2 years back when we have been looking how can blockchain actually help businesses, whether to adjust their top or bottom line. And we have actually introduced our platform, which is a public blockchain, last year. Also our offering goes into the private blockchain, so we are truly connected to enterprise systems. And basically we already have engaged with certain large customers, but of course when it comes to the innovation, most of the innovation comes from the small players. So and definitely this is where the businesses will play along.
We might not offend some of the large players in the industry, but anyways, yes, it's true, especially in the last few years we have seen all the major disruptions came from the smallish players in the start, but later on they became Google and all that. REA, so from Amsterdam and Unchained.io, please.
Yeah. My name is Arje van Ooyen. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Unchained.io. We are a Netherlands, Amsterdam-based blockchain company, and we are focusing on blockchain integration, which means that we have developed a software solution to simplify, accelerate, secure, and lower the cost of integrating existing business applications as well as devices with blockchain networks, where we are blockchain technology independent. So it helps you to integrate your business application, whether it's ERP, logistics, hospital systems, with any type of blockchain network.
Wonderful. And the live wire of our panel, Mr. Marco.
Yes, hello. My name is Marco Quacken. I'm advising a company that is doing a fully regulated security token offering. It's an oil and gas company with assets in the US. Our background is finance and marketing, financial products. We're fairly new to the business. Of course, interested and a fan for some time. So I was watching it, and I think this space is on the verge to become something more incredible than with the slight little hitches it had in the past. Yeah, we are launching our pre-IPO via fully regulated secure and token offering today with Unlock. We've got a stand and lovely ladies and gentlemen helping you with information. But now let's go back to what we came here for, to talk about.
Wonderful. So since morning we've been talking about blockchain, and the panel number 2 especially was very insightful. They were discussing about the non-permission blockchain, and especially they took on this topic of is there a value of a permission blockchain or not? So yes, I think we have some things to discuss on that point, and since the whole topic is about enterprise application and of blockchain in supply chain arena, in the vertical of trade, So this is what we will be discussing, and I'll be starting with the question to my panel. Are a lot of hyped use cases when we see like the application of blockchain and just type it in the Google, thousands and thousands of the use cases come up, and then most of them are hyped ones. So I would like to go to my panel and ask them if they have ever seen some implementation of those hyped use cases and which one they think will be the next game changer. I'll start with Marco on that.
I think a technology really works and get to a certain point. Everybody's talking about mass adoption. I think it really works. It really is successful when it works for the user. You know, everybody started using the internet at 7 kilobits or whatever. Then it was crazy to go to a bank and have access, and it should be secure. I think with blockchain it's the same. As soon as we don't feel what is happening, but we have the benefits of it, then we have something that actually is valuable in this space. I worked for a huge German automotive company 2000, and it was a big project because they had their marketing materials all over the world and all over the place. And there was a change in taxation law that brought them actually, and I was doing the business development there, brought them actually on the case. We implemented an intranet for their marketing materials. Sounds easy, yeah? But what it did, it changed the brand value of the company, and it did it by a very large number. So their symbol, which is a star, was all of a sudden the same everywhere. They have now decided to put this on a blockchain to really trace it, because it is so valuable for the company to have a whole and good brand identity. And I think that's a use case, at least for a company that really benefits for them.
Wonderful. So Arye, in your region, if you have some interesting use case to share with us.
Yeah, I see blockchain very much as a technology through which organizations that are collaborating with each other in a supply chain or whatever kind of delivery process should change the data in a secure and fully digitalized manner. This is data that these organizations are already exchanging with each other, but in many cases it's based on paper, Excel sheets, PDFs attached in emails, or overtyping data from one application to the other, meaning pretty inefficient. Mm-hmm. It's delayed because of the human interventions. Errors are occurring, and there's also fraud. So, and actually, both organizations have already digitalized IT systems. So, the question is, why are we printing paper to convey mesh of data from one application to the other? That is because of the technology complexity. If you're going to use traditional technology, where each time with all the different parties you have to agree on the technology standards to be applied. Mm-hmm. The value of blockchain is that a lot of that technology comes out of the box. It's open source, so it's also vendor independent, and that makes it possible to do this collaboration and exchange of data and focus much more on the application side of things, rather than each time solving all the technical issues. And I call it also as the next wave in digitalization, because it means that the digitalization process that has been put in, that's actually started, I think, the beginning of 2000 with the emergence of internet, is now reaching in the next stage that also the delivery processes behind is starting to digitalize further.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Arian, your take on use cases for the blockchain in the enterprises?
Yeah, we at Sophia TX, we have focused more on basically the non-fintech. So it doesn't mean that we are not a platform capable for the fintech sector. But when it comes to the regulation in the space of fintech, it's much more longer. It takes some time. So when you go to construction business, shifting the schedules on the delivery and the milestones, you don't need a regulator there to basically tell you how you should operate your business. That's actually really regulator free. So we have actually come up with dozens of use cases when we started actually Sophia. One of the easiest use case is how to exchange the typical documents, business documents, such as invoice, purchase order, deliveries. Today, we have got heterogeneous technologies such as SAP, when it comes to the enterprise level at least, Oracle, Microsoft. So, and this is like talking between English, Spanish, Mandarin. So basically, this is different type of technologies, and you
there
always
are
need a...
so many, sorry to cut you, but there are so many who are still exchanging the data on emails as well.
Exactly.
WhatsApp and email.
Exactly. So blockchain can be seen as one of the basically the middleware or the middle layer, how to actually, which can be used to interact between those companies. So it's kind of the collaboration protocol. Of course, connectivity to the systems is crucial because today companies invested millions into the enterprise technologies such as SAP or Oracle. So, and they are not keen to actually go through the pain again, because 70% of that big ERP implementation fail, and that's a statistic which is known worldwide. So they will definitely look for the blockchain which is able to connect and to be integrated into such a platform.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very important to say, because if we are talking to the CXO level on a Gartner, so the first question which we are getting, how do you integrate it with my system?
Yeah.
So how can blockchain basically transfer the data from my system to another system? Just even in the company or outside the company, the moment you cross the border of the company, you are exposed to completely different technology of your vendor or supplier or your customer. So we have to think that blockchain can actually filling up the white space in between the companies. So this is where most of the people are waiting for the killer app.
Yeah.
And we can have plenty of them, right? So basically, but how to get the fundamentals right? So what are the fundamentals for blockchain to be actually entering the business space? And that's the topic we are going to discuss here. But here, the fundamental thing is businesses operate on a relationship level. That means that if there is an application from a business point of view, I want to see who is behind the application. I want to have somebody I can blame or I can slap or even bring to court if necessary. So people start dreaming that blockchain will be disrupting everything. I think that here we have to come to the ground. So our CEO keeps telling that if you have too many visions, you should see a doctor. So, and that's fair enough statement, because businesses really see blockchain as a next generation technology with a disruptive element. And what's really important to say, it definitely will enable new business models to be created,
Great.
same as a dot-com bubble.
Sure. And that's the good part. I like that you started with a very basic application. It's not something that you want to come up with a very big killer app, a disruptive killer app. So anyways, thank you very much for your intake. Noor.
Yeah, so unfortunately the legal space in terms of blockchain is a little bit sparse, because lawyers are not good with technology, and that's a fact. But having said that, what we're trying to do now, and one of our projects, is we're trying to aid enforcement in the context of blockchain. So if, for example, you have an order from a court, and then you take that order and you want to go to another jurisdiction and have it enforced, because that's where the assets are, it can sometimes be very complicated for two reasons. The first reason is that the court that you go to enforce that judgment might have to verify that the originating court is a court that has power to make that judgment. And second of all, that the order hasn't been tampered with or played with or anything like that. So to go and prove these two things, you have to go to various government departments, get lots of stamps, you've got to get the documents notarized, and so on and so forth. And this process typically takes 2 years, we find. So what we're doing now, and this is something that the DIFC courts pitched only a few months ago at a commercial courts conference in New York, was let's all get together as courts and let's all get on the blockchain. Let's put all of our judgments onto the blockchain so that we can help people enforce their judgments a lot quicker. Because it's all well and good to get a court order, but if you can't enforce that court order, what benefit do you have? There's literally nothing. So we want to help people enforce their judgments as quickly as possible, because there's lots of cross-jurisdictional trade, lots of cross-jurisdictional deals happening all the time. So we want to do that very, very quickly so that people aren't moving assets out of the jurisdiction when there is delay, for example. So that's our very basic use case at this stage.
Not long ago, we used to hear about another application of blockchain in this part, which was will on the blockchains. So
Yes.
is there something happening in that regard? Or?
Well, there is actually, yeah. So it's not yet been put to work, and we're trying to work very closely with, for example, Smart Dubai to eventually get this particular project launched. But the DIFC court operates a will service registry within it, and that's a will service registry for non-Muslims. So if you're non-Muslim and you live in Dubai, or rather you don't have to live in Dubai, if you have assets in Dubai, then you can execute a will under that will service registry. And what happens is upon the death of a person, the executor will go and seek a grant of probate of that will, so they look to execute the will. When they get a grant of probate from the DIFC courts, they then have to go and seek a deputation of that order in the Dubai courts. So they have to translate the order from the DIFC courts, take it to the Dubai courts, because
Right.
typically assets are located in Dubai, not in the DIFC, within the DIFC region. So when they go to the Dubai courts then issue something called a distribution letter, and the distribution letter is then sent to the various government entities that would supervise that particular asset. So if you have a car, then the Dubai courts would write a letter to the RTA to say, can you please release the car from this person to that person, because this person is now deceased. They would also do the same for the DLD. So if there's a property based in Dubai owned by the deceased, and the deceased wants to transfer that property to person number B, being, for example, a wife, then the Dubai courts would write to the DLD and say, can you please release the property in favour of the beneficiary. So this process also takes a very long time, we found. And what we want to do is put everything on the blockchain again, so that when the probate order is issued from the DIFC courts, the Dubai courts gets notification of that. The distribution letters or the certification of that order is then immediately okayed or certified onto the blockchain, and the different messages get sent to the different government departments, and then they can access the probate order, which is issued from the DIFC courts immediately. So hopefully, I mean, that's a project that's still very much in the making, and we hope to have some more announcements in the next year or so.
Yeah, good luck for that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Well,
I'll go to the...
Actually, regarding to this, I hope this really works really quickly. Yeah, I can just tell I've been to a registrar office 4 times in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, something was missing, was a stamp missing, drove me crazy. Yeah, so that would be very lovely to have that already in place, where you can just submit. It's transparent. Everybody knows what's happening. So this is a very good use case. I like that.
Very good. I mean, we're trying to just decrease. I mean, it's twofold really, because we're trying to decrease the amount of paperwork involved, because we don't want to deal with papers anymore. We're living in 2019. And second of all, it's obviously so very efficient. So thank you.
Yeah.
We hope to start sending through that quickly.
So your work gets appreciation right in the
Very
panel.
good. Thank you.
Right. All right, so now I'll go to the middle part of my panel, and we'll be having a very technical kind of a question I'll be asking. And since both of your background mainly is from the tech side, there was like an argument in the second panel that there is no justification. One of the esteemed panelists has this point that there is no justification for the permission blockchain, because whatever they are serving, that can be, we can have that use case served from the legacy database systems. So coming for this permission blockchain, is there a value, is there existence? Starting from you, Marion.
I think that people, first of all, have to understand what's the permission blockchain. Because it's a private blockchain or consortium-based blockchain, but look, if you have an ecosystem, imagine that you are a car maker, right, or original equipment manufacturer. So you have got your suppliers, and they are basically scaled into tiers. You would like to have a collaboration layer which is actually effective. So we have been engaged with few car makers, and basically we get a challenge. Why would we not basically build such a platform on a central database, right? So, and the question is, okay, you have got the capital, you have got the money or the cash to invest, so why didn't you build up? Because you have to consider the investments you have to make into that. So basically, that's a huge capex. If you just look on a typical supply chain management or ERP system, that's a top 5 capex in the large enterprises. Then you have to operate it, right? So you have to have the resources in-house, or basically from your suppliers or outsourcers, who actually run the typical portal or whatever the application will be. So, and then there is the trust issue. So if somebody operates such a let's say dinosaur, so you have to actually push the player to actually pull their data into the platform. So basically, how can you establish the trust element, right? That's one of the key messages here. But the message we actually say that, okay, you invest the money, you operate it. So basically, that's actually increasing your cost base. But then, of course, if you create a blockchain solution where everybody actually jumps in, so basically, and provide their kind of a data and share their data they want to, so basically you have got an ecosystem of companies operating within an, let's say, permission layer, because you as a company or your neighbor can actually say that this company can jump in, and you don't have to maintain this, because companies are jumping out from the ecosystems, or basically there are business relationships which are tied up. So, and then you have got also the possibility to create the shared platform where transactions are being secured. So basically, you don't want the other party to be exposed that you operate with this according to this condition. So it has to be also, there has to be a flavor of encryption as well. So, but the message is that permission blockchain has its purpose. So there will be not just one or couple of public blockchain. There will be, it's the collaboration layer in between the companies. So the central application will remain, blockchain will complement those applications and allow the collaboration and much more efficient data exchange. This is where permission blockchain has definitely a future.
Right. So Arya, add on this argument of Marian that there is a value proposition for the permission blockchain. Convince us more on that.
Yeah, and then I agree. I think there's too much focus on the technology, and I think there are much more important aspects and more critical elements to make blockchain successful. First place, it's about collaboration.
Right.
So that means that organizations need to start agreeing on joint business processes. You can't deviate from that, because otherwise you have a mismatch in the way you're doing business with each other. So that means, and you see it also to the origin of many blockchain networks. These are consortia, joint ventures or whatever, created by organizations that are collaborating with each other in the supply chain and say, okay, we have a joint benefit in doing things in a more efficient manner. But that means that, okay, the next step is agree, okay, how are we going to fulfill our processes managed through the blockchain. So that's a very interesting aspect, that the orchestration of that process can be managed and monitored through a blockchain network, and that every has the same up-to-date and real-time information on the process that is taking place across all the different participants. Secondly, you also need to agree on, okay, this is the process, in what are the data formats we're going to use. You need to agree that everyone makes use of the same data formats with and not only the semantics of the syntax, but also in particular the semantics. And then if you have a blockchain in place, then of course is, okay, how can organizations start participating in this? And participating means not typing over the data that you have in your ERP system or logistics systems or hospital information system, but connecting them so that you can exchange the data seamlessly. And again, try to abstract the complexity of the technology complexity and make it as easy as possible for organizations to participate in blockchain networks. Because at the end of the day, you run the risk. You have created a very interesting blockchain network that can bring a lot of value. But if every organization or if participants say, well, I need to make a huge investment to integrate my existing systems with the blockchain network, then I'm going to wait until there is more volume and more participants. You create a chicken and egg issue. So the lower the barrier you can create for organizations to participate, it's not only in the benefit of the participant, but also for the blockchain community in general.
In general. And that's my take also, that there are two sides of the coins, so head and tail. So it's like, again, public blockchains or permissionless blockchain, and at the same time, permission blockchain. They are the two sides of the blockchain. I think they both have their own like value proposition and the use cases. So it depends on the use cases where you have to apply them. And if you say that, yes, legacy system, legacy database systems have their utility and they do equally well as the permission blockchains, okay, as far as now, it's okay. But going forward, the more the companies, the more the techpreneurs will explore the permission blockchain side, I think the more the utility we'll see, or the more use cases we'll see in the future for the permission blockchain. So moving forward to my two, like your other panelists, Noor and Marco, you guys are mainly from the regulatory side. So tell us about the regulatory challenges when it comes to the application of the blockchain or adaptation of the blockchain. So we'll start with the Marco.
Yes, actually, we've been talking beforehand. Of course, it's not all about the technology. Everybody knows or has an idea of what the potential advantage or of the advantages and the possibilities of putting things on the blockchain are also the limitations. We've been talking about it. But, you know, after all, especially when it comes to processes, there's a lot of interaction, and an interaction is also a legal level. So the regulatory part comes in. So if I have a smart contract and it needs certain things to be then executed, the question is, if something goes wrong for whatever reasons, yeah, where am I governed? Where actually is the smart contract regulated? How does it work? So what we need on this level, and this is, I would say, an international challenge to solve, is to actually find a regulatory common ground to get those smart contracts in place and actually verified. This is not the case at the moment. So, you know, everybody has their little pocket and everybody has an opinion about it, but there is no common ground. So I think this needs to be solved, or is one of the big challenges that needs to be solved to become a mass technology and will be used, because especially companies, I don't know, we heard this morning about Facebook and Google, and everybody's working on different projects, and why are they not really doing it on a public level? It's because of liability. Yeah, they don't want to be liable for something that they not know about, which will happen in a year, 5 or 10 down the line. So we need clearance with that. So, yeah.
Right. No, the regulatory challenges.
Yeah, I think Marco is exactly right, and he's hit the nail on the head in that there's not enough laws and regulations out there to tell us how blockchain disputes will be governed and who will bear liability. We need to educate our regulators, and we need to educate judges as well, because like we mentioned earlier, there will be disputes that will arise. People need to be held accountable. But at the moment, as things currently stand, it's very difficult to point a finger, and it's very difficult to find an umpire who's going to be able to sit down and say, you're right, you're wrong, this is what happens, and this is what the contract says. There's no regulation, and unfortunately, again, when we speak of regulators, we speak of lawyers. The moment we go into the technology space, people do get very intimidated. And I gave this example to REA yesterday when I had a chat with him, and I said that when I went to New York and I spoke to about 200 of the most senior judges in the world, the second I said blockchain, I lost them. You know, one person actually closed his eyes in front of me. So I had to sit there and translate it into very simple terms and break it down and convince him that this is something that is up and coming and it's very relevant. And we need to educate these people about emerging technology, including myself. I mean, again, I come from a legal background, I know bits and pieces, but I'm certainly not as immersed as my colleagues here on the panel.
Right. So I'll come back to this challenge of a smart contract's legal value anywhere in the world to both of you. But before that, I'll go to again the tech guys. So share some technological challenges for the blockchain to become mainstream in the enterprises.
Okay,
Yes.
I can take that one.
Arya.
Of course, there are the obvious ones like that it's the number of transactions it can process, the latency, but I think that is going to become applicable when you talk about large firms. Well, I think there are still already a huge number of very interesting use cases where you don't hit those issues. And also if you now see how the blockchain technology has already progressed last 2 years. There's a significant improvement already, so that will be solved. And I don't think we have to bother about that. There's another aspect, and that has been touched upon this morning. I think that's even more valid. That is about privacy, GDPR type of things. If you store all the data on the blockchain, and even if you encrypt the data, but it's data that not only permanently stored.
It's still immutable.
But even if it's patient data or if it's data on a life insurance, not even technically, but even also functionally, it needs to stay there for decades.
Yes.
And over time, technology is progressing, so what is now not decryptable can be decryptable 30 years from now, which is in a lifetime something that's overseeable. If you're now a child and your healthcare data is on the blockchain, then you hope to live 30 years from now. So also
the quantum computing challenge will also be there.
Yeah, and what you see now is that that awareness is starting to grow, and that it's not only blockchain, but you see now also the combination of blockchain and traditional technology, where you actually sign the data so that it can be tampered with anymore, that it's verifiable, but the actual privacy related data is kept off-chain, as they call it, and can even stay at the original source.
Right.
But through the blockchain, organizations can then request, maybe even with the consent of the actual owner, to share that data between different organizations. These are very interesting patterns, I think. And there you see it's not only blockchain in isolation. You start to mingle around with the different technologies and use the right technology for the right purpose.
Absolutely right. Great. Yes, Mary, you want to add something on that?
So I would like to add, so what Arjen said, it's completely true. So I'm coming from that side where I was a consultant, so I actually approached the large enterprises and the players. It's always professional babysitting, how we call it, to the CIO and to the procurement and to the legal and to all the aspects of risk and chief technology officers. So what Arjen said is it's completely true. Whenever you step into the business, first of all, the connectivity integration to the enterprise platform, that's the first thing. Second thing, if you are offering private or public blockchain, if it's private, it's somewhere hidden in the data center, or it's on a cloud. So basically, if you're not exposing the data outside of the company, you are safe. However, if you go to public, of course, personal data, customer data, GDPR regulation, that all has to be considered. So there is no chief risk officer or chief information security officer who will ever basically sign off. Then when we are talking public blockchains, so imagine today the offering on the market. So you have got the most known ones like Ethereum, Bitcoin, etc., where the transaction prices are floating, depends on how basically the market woke up. So basically, chief financial officer is always looking on a stability. When I do million transaction, how much does it cost? 2 million, 20 millions? Yeah. So nobody is going to hedge that risk. Nobody is going to sign such a solution which is not predictable in terms of pricing. In terms of connectivity to enterprise systems, of course, people invested in the technology, so they would like to complement the existing technology and maybe gradually remove the technology or move to another technology. So these are all the aspects we actually have been facing over the last year on a Gartner level. And this is where we from Sophia will actually build up also the off-chain solution, which Orion mentioned. So we have got the connectivity to enterprise systems, stable fees, et cetera, et cetera. So we consider ourselves. But what's most important is that you offer a software to the business. And your customer expects the SLA, so service level agreements with you. Because if there is a problem with your software, you are obliged to fix it. There is no organization, no business which will ever subscribe to kind of an open source which is not maintained. They always like to have somebody who can actually go to. And that's really crucial to the business. Of course, the lower you go into the business, so small and mid-sized businesses, the different criteria you have to meet. So the large corporation, a little bit difficult. But innovation and basically 90% of the innovation are coming from the small and mid-sized businesses, and that has to be clearly articulated. Basically, the large corporation are the followers in that space.
Right, perfect. They touched upon a very important topic for the GDPR. First of all, like twofold question. Is GDPR like going apart or out of the Europe as well? If you do you see that happening? And plus, how the blockchain community or ecosystem can handle GDPR?
I see it from two sides. I'm actually quite liberal when it comes to my personal data, but that's a personal opinion and not much to hide. Of course, there should be privacy. But for example, we're doing an STO, so we have to fully KYC, AML, every investor. We do this with partners, but I was screening the market. And that was an interesting thing to do. What kind of levels of not only professionality, but of actually privacy you have at the end. But what we would have at the end, especially if you go through markets like in the US and you go and screen a so-called accredited investor, you will know everything about him. That he has to submit bank statements, 401ks, just to prove that he's an accredited investor. So it's not only, oh, here's my passport, and I'll have a little picture shown and I signed something. Yeah, so there's really in-depth knowledge all of a sudden about your investors, which we didn't have, not to that extent at least. And then it's stored. So I'm actually quite intrigued how they can keep it then in terms of the privacy for the investors. So that is actually, I think, one of the challenges as well.
Right. No, we discussed about the challenges around smart contracts, legal value throughout the world. Do you see that happening, and who are the players who are like acting on some kind of a solution for the smart contracts legal value?
That's a good question, actually. I think at the moment the key players are people who know most about blockchain, and they should be the drivers. So in Dubai, my experience is Smart Dubai is doing an amazing job in educating, and you know, obviously they're a branch of the government, so they have been very well immersed in this movement, and not just on blockchain, but AI and all emerging technologies. So I guess it depends on the jurisdiction, but certainly in Dubai, Smart Dubai has been very active, like I said. There's also lots of, I know there's university research and so on and so forth, so there's focus groups emerging from that who might go out there and make some movement and spark up some fire, if that makes any sense. So at least that's the Dubai example. In terms of other jurisdictions, I wouldn't really know. That's my honest opinion.
Right. Looking forward for some kind of solution for that, because for the enterprises, smart contracts, legal value has to be there. So moving on to our next question, which is that if you guys have to wear the consultant's hat as a blockchain consultant, and you're going to some kind of enterprise for their implementation, what will be your strategic steps for the decision makers so that they can put implementation of a blockchain in a smoother way? So what will be your few steps or recommendations to the decision makers of the enterprises?
My first step, in my very humble view, is number one, education.
Good.
And number two, troubleshooting. In terms of elaborating on that, as I mentioned before, you still need to raise awareness, you need to educate people who want to implement certain strategies, certain projects. I don't think enough people know about the technology and the risks associated with it, and you just raised GDPR, and that's actually a very real risk because you don't know, for example, where the source of the information is once it's on the blockchain. So certainly education is important. More will come to mind, I think, as my
Marion,
colleagues speak up.
What will be your list?
As a former consultant, I will start with a problem, right? That's kind of a consultant's disease. Companies are exposed to a lot of problems. So when it comes to technology, when it comes to their business models, there are new technology coming up which actually are disrupting today's business model. So we also have basically startup with the education, and this is the key because you don't necessarily have to understand what's under the hood, what's actually blockchain in mathematics and algorithms. That's not necessarily what we're looking at. We look at how can you actually bring blockchain in a reasonable manner and explain it to the business. Businesses need to understand, okay, does it hit my cost side or does it hit my revenue side? So imagine that there are companies which try to go into that space. So from a supply chain perspective, of course, due to the transparency and due to the collaboration, I can easily say that my supplier will tomorrow manage my stock if I'm on blockchain because I don't have to have all the headcount with me looking at the paperwork, also like in the courts, and submitting the delivery or the purchase order and dealing with the invoices. But I can have my supplier looking transparently on my stock. I have got my SLAs or KPI signed with the supplier, and he see what are my safety stocks, and he can supply actually on the daily or hourly basis when my safety stock has dropped at a certain level. So from this perspective, businesses have to actually, first of all, see what's the potential of the technology. Then they have to be able to rapid prototype and design it. Of course, you have to come up with a business case and the ROIs, basically how the businesses are deciding, right, when they purchase new technology. And of course, you have to be ahead of the competition.
Very good.
That's the key here.
Right. Yes, Arya.
Yeah, like I said, blockchain is a very interesting technology in supply chains or delivery chains between all kind of organizations. So the most successful blockchain initiatives I've seen is start collaborating. But also that creates an additional complexity because it creates more dependency. So don't try to boil the ocean, don't try to do everything yourself, or try everything to do at the same time. Start working together, can be a small group, work on a very specific topic, but already delivering certain business value can be small, but enough to convince sponsors to further invest in it. And then take small steps, prove the value that you have, and then gradually expand on that and involve more participants from the supply chain.
Right. Yes, Marco,
Yeah, absolutely.
to sum it up.
Can't agree more with Arje. Start. That's the first thing. Yeah. Identify something that really makes sense. Get people excited. It's with every project, every new technology. You need, some backing in the company with your team. Get an exciting team together. Show the value. Share it. Communicate about it. Take away a little bit the fear of this technology hurdle. It's only a tool. It's only a vehicle. It's blockchain. But actually, it does something. And then build on from there onwards. Yeah, whether it is something that people, as I said, get excited about, can be communication or whatever field it is, what gets people actually up and running. I like the sponsoring idea. Yeah, it grows like that's a negative term, or like a tumor. It's like if somebody gets excited and said, well, this is my project, do you want to get on? So it spreads out.
Right.
No worries. And that, of course, I think is always a good thing, a good way to implement something new in an environment or in an organization.
Right. So we come to the end of our discussion. So if we have any question from your side, so we can take it through the panel. Right. So one good thing about this panel is that there is a myth that when there is a gold rush, not all have to be going and digging the gold itself. The best part of this panel is that they are the people who are like selling shawls or making their own one as well. So I would like to thank you all for bringing this utility to the ecosystem, not developing your own blockchains and selling it, trying to sell it like the next best killer app. So thank you very much, and looking forward for a lot of insightful outputs coming from your way in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.